The courthouse is hushed, the sort of hushed that practically vibrates in your ears. The air is filled with the scent of wood polish and aged paper. Somewhere down the hallway, a clock ticks reliably, nearly too loudly, as if it's marking time for something significant. And then it does. The double doors at the other end swing wide, their hinges creaking with a low groan that appears to reverberate across the marble floor. Gallery goers look up. A few murmurs pass between them. And there he is, Kody Brown. The man so many have watched for more than a decade on TLC's Sister Wives now stands framed in the doorway. But this isn't the same Kody you've seen laughing in the Arizona sunshine or tossing out quick jokes during family dinners. This Kody walks differently. His shoulders are squared, his steps deliberate, his jaw is set like stone. But it's his eyes that tell the real story. If you've been following the Browns for years, you recognize Kody's eyes, how they twinkle when he's playing with one of the kids, how they flash when a disagreement becomes heated, how they melt when discussing his dream of family. But today, they're different. They're hiding something deeper. A blend of hope, because maybe he'll walk out of here with a ruling that turns the future in his direction. Fear, because if things don't go right, the price won't be legal bills. It will be seconds, milestones, and memories lost that can never be regained. And determination, because whether today turns out right or wrong, he knows he owes it his all. This isn't a TV ratings thing or a staged confessionals. There's no camera crew accompanying him into this room, no producer handing him questions, no chance to redo a scene until it feels absolutely right. This is real. The stakes are higher than they've ever been. Not just for him, but for the people who share his last name, his bloodline, his history. And when you've built a family as large and complicated as the Browns, custody doesn't just mean who gets to see the kids on weekends. It's about who gets to be the constant in their lives, and who becomes the occasional visitor. As Kody moves ahead, his shiny black shoes click on the courtroom floor. The noise is crisp, almost too harsh in the strained quiet. He doesn't look at the small cluster of individuals already seated. His gaze remains forward, directed at the long, shiny table where his lawyer sits. He knows that every step today will be observed by the judge, the lawyers, perhaps even by reporters who can't wait to capture the next installment of the Sister Wives drama. But unlike the reality show, he doesn't script the story here. No editing, no music swells to cushion the blows or amplify the tender moments. Only facts, evidence, arguments, and somewhere, in some quiet room not far away, the children at the center of this case are most likely oblivious to how tightly their own futures are being weighed. The judge's bench towers in front, raised, symbolic, a reminder that one individual in this room wields more authority than any reality television plot would ever dare concoct. The walls are covered with law books, their backs creased from repeated use, each one an unspoken witness to hundreds of family conflicts that preceded this one. Kody sits down, adjusts his tie, and lets out a deep breath. One breath alone appears to weigh years of family happiness, breakups, miscommunications, and of course, regrets. Deep down, he knows that this battle isn't about what's in the best interest of the children. It's about proving something to himself, perhaps even to the rest of the family. For the home viewers, those who've witnessed the Browns through cross-country relocations, relationship woes, and emotional couch interviews, this is new ground. Fans have witnessed family disputes. They've witnessed heartache. They've even witnessed breakups. But they've never witnessed Kody like this, in a situation where the lights aren't flattering, where every word is mic'd, and where the stakes are as tangible as they get. And maybe that's why this moment feels so heavy, because under all the drama and all the headlines, we're reminded that this isn't just a TV family, it's a real one. The seats behind him in the gallery are a mosaic of faces, a handful of notebook-bearing reporters, a pair of curious onlookers who stumbled in, attracted by rumors of a big case, and then mixed in among them, faces that are recognizable. Not all of the Brown family are present, but those who are have their gaze upon the man at its center. Some of the faces are drawn tight, others blank. A few are quietly optimistic. You can sense the past between them in the air, the unspoken recollections that hold them together even when they are facing each other on opposite sides of a courtroom. The bailiff announces the court into session. Talk is cut off in mid-sentence. The scrape of chairs against the floor sounds harshly. Everyone stands as the judge comes in, robes billowing, face solemn. Kody stands too, his posture tense but respectful. His eyes maintain a steady regard, not revealing too much. Within, however, his mind is in overdrive. Will the judge regard him as the father he knows himself to be, the one who's present, engaged, and committed fully to his children's welfare? Or will the case render him less sympathetic, as some headlines already have. For a fleeting instant, when the judge sits down and opening arguments start, Kody loses focus. He thinks about birthdays, school plays, the smile on his child's face the first time they learned how to ride a bike. Those are the memories he's fighting for. The mundane, unreplaceable moments that comprise a life. And that's the reality of custody battles. They're never about where the children sleep at night. They're about who gets to be present at the in-between moments, who is in the stands at a championship game, who is at the dinner table when the small everyday stories get shared. For Kody, those are the things that matter most. And today, those moments are at stake. The judge shifts forward, reading over notes. The lawyers shift uncomfortably in their seats, prepared to speak. The first words of this trial are about to be uttered, and no matter what transpires from here on out, one thing is definite. By the time the sun sets today, the Brown family will never be the same again, and so the fight begins. But for now, we're left with that image burned into our minds. The heavy doors swinging open, Kody stepping through with hope, fear, and determination in his eyes, walking toward the fight of his life. The journey to this moment in court wasn't overnight. It's been years in the making, years of passive tension, repressed resentment, and endless conversations that never seem to resolve anything. For Sister Wives fans, Kody Brown's journey has always been one of nuance. Multiple wives, a big and merged family, and the endless back and forth of trying to satisfy everyone. But as much as the cameras captured the public smiles, the large family dinners, and the family road trips, cracks were beginning to form behind the scenes. Those cracks increased, with each disagreement on parenting, each night-long argument over duty, and each time one parent felt the other wasn't pulling his weight enough. And now those cracks have become a chasm in the form of a court case, a custody dispute that would shine all of those intimate struggles in the unforgiving light of a courtroom. This specific conflict had been simmering for some time. It began quietly, nearly imperceptibly, to the outside world. A remark here, a dispute there. Kody sensed that some rules weren't being followed. Bedtimes weren't established. School assignments weren't being checked up on the way he believed they should. In his head, these were indications that order was disintegrating, and for a man who respected order, this was intolerable. All the while, his ex-wife had a different perspective. She thought she was giving the kids what they needed. A stable, loving home. She contended that she'd been the one scheduling doctor's appointments, going to school gatherings, making dinner, and putting the children to bed at night. To her, Kody's grievances sounded more like an effort to control the way she lived than legitimate concern. The conflict ratcheted up with time. It wasn't about the children anymore. It was about trust, respect, and competing ideas about the future. When the pandemic arrived, those differences only grew more heated. Quarantine regulations, education at home, and health measures became contentious topics. Kody had his opinions on what was safe and responsible. His ex-wife had hers. And when those opinions clashed, it made things even farther apart. By the time attorneys entered the picture, the crisis had long since passed the point of mere bargaining. Both parties were certain that they were doing what was best for the children. Kody felt that more custody would allow him to create a more stable, structured world. He envisioned a future where his say was more significant in decision-making, where he could see that his children's education, healthcare, and moral development were on the right track by his estimation. His ex-wife had a different take on things. To her, this was about keeping the kids feeling secure. She believed that they had already experienced enough upheaval, moving residences, witnessing family dynamics change, getting used to life post-split. In her opinion, bringing them into a new custody situation would be adding more chaos to the mix. She thought the children needed the security of familiarity, of waking up in the same residence each day and being surrounded by the same people. This is where the emotional baggage of custody battles gets too much to bear. This isn't only about paper and legal codes. This is about memories, about birthdays, holidays, bedtime stories, and who gets to enjoy them. Every court motion that's filed is full of personal history. Every word delivered by a lawyer is full of unspoken emotion. For Kody, entering that courtroom wasn't merely about winning in a technical sense. It was about demonstrating to the judge that he wasn't merely a reality TV star or a flawed father figure. It was about establishing he was a committed parent who had something of worth to bring to his children. And for his former wife, it was about ensuring the court was aware that the stability she'd worked so hard to create all these years wasn't something to be carelessly upset. The stakes could not have been higher. In the public eye, this was another dramatic turn in the Sister Wives saga. But to the individuals involved, it was personal. It was about futures, not Nielsen ratings. It was about bedtime hugs, school drop-offs, and life lessons that cannot be quantified in dollars or television viewership. The run-up to this day was draining for all. There were the mediation sessions that resulted in frustration. There were nights spent by Kody overanalyzing conversations from the past, thinking what he might have done differently. There were times when his ex-wife had felt as though the world was paying attention, watching and waiting for her to make the next wrong move. And then, naturally, there were the kids caught in the middle, attempting to sort it all out in a situation that even grown-ups find confusing. They asked questions that neither parent could provide complete answers to. They could feel the tension, even when the grown-ups were attempting to cover it up. And with the court hearing looming on the horizon, those unsaid fears hung over them. By the time of the hearing in the morning, the emotional toll was in full effect. This was no longer a family disagreement. This was a court battle, one that would leave an indelible imprint on the Brown family narrative. Whether Kody emerged triumphant or defeated, everything would be different. What caused this moment wasn't one argument or one bad week. It was the result of years of changing dynamics, increasing differences, and the hard truth that even in families founded on love and common dreams, sometimes those dreams draw people in opposing ways. And now the question wasn't what happened, but what happens next. The morning sun shone through the tall, thin windows of the courthouse, sending long shafts of light streaming across the waxed floor. The building smelled that unmistakable smell, a combination of old wood, paper, and the lingering scent of coffee from the attorney's lounge. Individuals murmured in low voices as they anticipated the day's cases to start. But in this specific courtroom, every eye was riveted on one family, one case, one father and one mother, whose lives were soon going to be exposed before a judge. Kody Brown sat back in the wooden table, his spine erect, but his fingers drumming softly against the folder that sat in front of him, a tiny giveaway that the placid facade was hiding a tempest of nervousness. Next to him, his lawyer leaned forward, speaking softly, offering last-minute words of advice. It wasn't a day of legalities only. It was a day of telling a story, a good solid story that would convince the court of his side. On the other side of the aisle, his previous wife sat in silence, fingers folded nicely on the table. She did not glance at Kody. Her gaze was cast ahead, observing the vacant judge's bench as if running through her own thoughts. She possessed her own lawyer, her own well-rehearsed account of things, and she too was here to share a tale. But her tale would differ significantly from his. A crisp knock sounded in the room, the signal for the judge to appear. All the people collectively rose to their feet. Clerk's voice sounded, the official greeting, "All rise. The Court of the State of Dispy is now in session, the Honorable Judge presiding." The judge came in, robes billowing, face not giving anything away. The mood was immediately changed from restless expectation to strained quiet. The clerk enunciated the title of the case, and suddenly everything was serious and substantial. This was no longer a family squabble. It was on public record. Every detail, every utterance, every bit of evidence would be recorded, weighed, and measured. Kody's lawyer stood up first. The opening argument was slow, measured, almost chatty. He described Kody as more than a TV personality in real life. He was a father who attended school functions, took the kids out hiking on Saturdays, had long, intimate conversations over the kitchen table. The lawyer described a man devoted to teaching his children how to navigate life with discipline, values, and unwavering love. He spoke of a home that was safe, warm, and nurturing, where the children could grow. To drive it home, the lawyer mentioned details: parent-teacher conferences Kody had attended, late evenings spent tutoring, phone calls during nights when the children were away. These were not simply facts. They were designed to form an emotional picture in the judge's head. When he was finished, there was a silence, long enough to allow the image to sink in, before the second lawyer stood to address them. The tone changed in an instant. Kody's ex-wife's attorney wasn't arguing that Kody didn't love his children, but she emphasized another type of love, the one born of stability, consistency, and unshakable daily presence. She portrayed her client as the steady in the children's lives, the one who had been present for the little everyday moments that define a child's sense of security. Her tone was measured but unyielding. She described routines, the school pickups, the homework routine, the bedtime routine that never varied. She discussed the familiarity of the children's present home, their friends, their schools, and the community with which they were familiar. She cautioned that removing them now, or dividing their time in a manner that broke these habits, would induce undue emotional distress. Neither lawyer yelled. This was no shouting match. It was chess. Both sides set up their pieces with precision, waiting for the other to make a move. And yet, below the surface of calm, the emotional tension was evident. Kody listened attentively, his eyes locked on the judge. Now and then he made a note, quietly pushing them over to his attorney. At one juncture, his jaw clenched, a flash of aggravation flickering across his features when the lawyer for his previous wife suggested his previous choices the public had witnessed on national TV, spoke to instability. On the other side of the aisle, his ex-wife was calm, but her hands clutched her pen a little too hard. She understood that every word in this courtroom could influence the judge's perception of her as a mother. The judge, for their part, revealed little. They listened attentively, nodding occasionally, scribbling notes in neat handwriting. Occasionally, they would ask a question to clarify. They weren't challenging, but wanted to be sure they got the facts. Judges are instructed to remove emotion from their rulings, but in family court, the human factor is impossible to eliminate. As morning progressed, witnesses were summoned. A school counselor was first on the stand, and she told of the children's performance and emotional state. She described them in warm terms, but also noted the stress they'd endured through the family upheaval. She didn't seem to be taking sides, just saying what she knew. Then there was a family friend, someone who knew both Kody and his previous wife for years. He characterized Kody as an intense and involved dad, but did admit that the back and forth between homes sometimes left the children unsettled. It was a double-edged sword. Both lawyers pounced on the portions of his testimony that helped their own argument. As the hours passed, the tension in the room never really eased. The quiet was almost oppressive at times, broken only by the shuffling of papers or the clicking of a pen. Every so often, a viewer in the gallery, a curious onlooker, or perhaps a distant relative, shifted in their seat, reminded that they were witnessing something deeply personal. By the time the afternoon session began, the tone had shifted slightly. Both sides had laid out sufficient groundwork to establish the basis for their case, and now it was a matter of reinforcing the essentials. Kody's side reviewed the necessity of a father's presence, the plus of joint decision-making, and his dedication to cooperative co-parenting. The other side brought up the children's requirements for continuity, the risks of too much changing, and the importance of maintaining their lives as free as possible from disturbance. It wasn't boisterous, it wasn't gaudy, but it was intense in a manner unique to family court, where the stakes aren't tallied in dollars or real estate, but in children's day-to-day lives. When the judge eventually called a recess, each side let out a breath, but only for a moment. Outside the courtroom itself, Kody and his attorney conferenced about what came next. Directly across the hall, his ex-wife did the same. Neither moved toward the other. By then, the distance between them wasn't merely physical. It was emotional, philosophical, and maybe permanent. And as they stood to go back again for the next round, one thing was certain: this was not over yet. The judge had only heard the first whispers of their stories, and the toughest, most intimate parts were yet to come. By the time the clock on the courtroom wall struck past noon, air inside seemed thicker, as if everybody had been holding their breath for hours. Lawyers had been talking alternately, the cadence of argument and rebuttal almost hypnotic, until it happened. The judge, previously quiet for the most part, leaned forward in her seat, folded her hands upon the bench, and set her eyes on Kody Brown. Her voice was measured, but bore a gravity that held the room quiet in an instant. "Mr. Brown," she started, waiting long enough for the question to be suspended in the air, "how will you make decisions in case of a disagreement?" The room just stopped. Until now, Kody's attorney had spoken for him, draping his version of what happened in carefully crafted words, creating a polished narrative of fatherhood and engagement. But now, that security blanket was yanked away. The judge wasn't seeking a legal case, she was seeking his truth. Kody leaned forward a little, his hands folded in his lap. You could almost see the ideas whizzing around in his head. He breathed slowly before speaking. "Your Honor, disagreements are going to occur. That's parenting, even within one household. My intention is to talk, really communicate. If we cannot agree, I will refocus the discussion back onto what will help the kids most. Not what I want, not what she wants, but what they need." It was a cautious reply, but there was an edge of roughness in his voice, an indication that he was speaking from somewhere deeper than the sanitized legal text. The judge nodded but did not glance away. "And how," she asked, "will you make the children feel equally at home in both settings?" Kody paused this time. He looked down at the sheets of paper on his desk, as if he was hunting for the right words, but then returned to face her. "Your Honor, I know that there's a sense that one house will somehow feel more real than the other. I want to dispel that. I'll have the same habits. I'll let their rooms be actually their places, decked out the way they prefer, filled with their preferred books, clothing, and treats. When they're with me, they'll think they're not dropping by. They're home." There was no doubt he spoke from the heart. It was a kind of answer that wasn't born in a courtroom, but came instinctively from the gut. On the other side of the aisle, his ex-wife was still as a statue, her face impassive. Her lawyer scribbled furious notes, maybe composing a counter-argument. The judge turned her attention then. "And you," she said, addressing the other side, How much are you willing to be flexible? Could shared arrangements be an option? Could you bend if the children wanted to spend more time with their father? The ex-spouse's lawyer rose and answered first, his voice steady. Your Honor, my client is committed to the children's well-being. Stability is the priority. That means one primary home where they can wake up in the same bed, go to the same school, keep the same friends. We're not saying Mr. Brown shouldn't have access. We're saying that a consistent home base is in their best interest. The judge, though, wasn't ready to let the case close so quickly. She pressed for more information, specific questions. If a school activity coincided with Mr. Brown's time, would your client permit him to go? If the kids wanted to spend an extra night with their dad, would they be permitted to do so without making it into an issue? The responses were thoughtful, but not hasty. Each hesitation in that conversation seemed to thin the air out. At last, the attorney replied, "We appreciate order, but certainly, if it really best met the children's requirements, there could be accommodation. But we fear too much flexibility would upset their sense of security." It wasn't aggressive. It was a tug-of-war conducted with soothing words and carefully measured tones. But beneath, the pressure was undeniable. By this point, all the individuals in that courtroom, the clerks, the bailiff, could feel it. This was no longer a simple custody hearing. The judge's queries weren't boilerplate filler. They were the first indications she was considering both sides seriously, not favoring either. The lawyer for Kody straightened a bit. The other attorney edged closer to his client. The stakes had been high, but they had just doubled. Kody went on talking when questioned, and although some of his responses were guarded, others had an unpolished roughness that proved to be in his advantage. He acknowledged that he wasn't perfect. He conceded times when there was a breakdown in communication between parents in the past. But every time, he came back to one thing: children were entitled to the best both parents could offer. At one time, the judge inquired, "Mr. Brown, do you think your children would want equal time with you if they had their way?" Kody did not bat an eyelash. "Yes, I do. But I also feel that kids don't always tell you what they really want if they think it will upset one of their parents. So, it's up to us, not them, to make it happen." That response was noted even by those sitting silently in the gallery. There were suppressed nods, whispers that promptly died down when the bailiff cast around. And as the questioning continued, the tone changed once more. It wasn't legal rights anymore. It was human dynamics. The judge didn't seem so concerned with whom had the better argument, but rather how each parent dealt with pressure in the moment. Kody's ex was also calm when it was her turn. She explained the routines of the children, the nighttime rituals, the security of knowing where they'd be every night. She said she worried about constant back and forth upsetting them in those critical school years. These were not unreasonable concerns, and the judge listened carefully. The actual moment of truth, though, was when the judge told them, "I will need to be convinced that both of you are capable of putting aside your differences for the children's sake, even when emotions are running high. If either of you gives me reason to believe that won't happen, my decision will reflect that." It was a threat wrapped in objectivity, but everyone present heard the weight of it. A standoff without raised voices. The attorneys returned to their binders, turning to pages underlined in yellow, raising issues they believed would tip the scales. But the atmosphere had changed, from theatrics to entreaty. Even without raised voices or melodramatic charges, the hearing had reached the point where words became precious. This was the stage where tone might be as potent as fact. Kody's voice was solid, but his hands would tighten on the edge of the table from time to time. His ex stood with her posture erect, though she made the slightest movement of fingers, a tap against her knee. They were battling, just not in the manner TV court dramas would lead you to expect. This wasn't about winning at all costs. It was about winning without alienating the one person who cared most at that time, the judge. By the time the judge leaned back in her chair, pen hovering over her papers, it was clear. This case still hung in the balance. The choice wasn't going to be whether she had the better lawyer. It wasn't even going to be just about who was best equipped to deliver the better home. It was going to be about one thing: who was best able to persuade the court, not on paper but in person, that they could really make the children come first. And at that point, no one in the room, not even Kody, was sure which way the balance was leaning. The courtroom had been charged all day, but now it was the kind of stillness you could feel, as if the low rumble of a storm brewing in the distance. People fidgeted in their seats, leaning forward in their chairs, holding their breath. Cameras were forbidden within, but in the minds of every individual in that room, already the moment was a headline. Kody Brown sat stiff, hands folded together, the knuckles white with pressure. His attorney leaned toward him but remained silent. On the other side of the aisle, opposing counsel sat with an air of confident quiet, though a flicker of doubt danced in their eyes. The case had been muddled, messy, emotional, and quite unpredictable. And now it was concluding. The judge cleared his throat, the echo ringing out amidst the silence. It wasn't hurried, it wasn't late, it was measured, like the first sentence of a tale that would unfold and be passed on for decades. After careful consideration of all testimony, evidence, and the best interests of the children, the words lingered there for a beat too long, as if the judge was giving everyone a sense of the gravity of what was to be. Kody's eyes never left the bench. His breathing was deep but measured, each breath almost a silent prayer. And then it happened. The court finds it is not in the best interest of the children to grant full custody to the petitioner. The words fell like a gavel blow before the real one had even descended. Down the room you sensed the air shift. Some shoulders uncoiled, others braced. Kody's jaw clenched. It was the result everyone had forecasted, but not the one he wanted. But then the judge went on. Nevertheless, the court recognizes the petitioner's shown commitment to more participation in the children's lives and finds it in their best interest to considerably increase his parenting time. Kody's head tilted ever so slightly, almost not at all. His lawyer's hand caressed his arm in a gentle gesture of encouragement. An altered custody schedule is ordered by this court. Mr. Brown will have extra weekends during the month, alternating major holidays, and more involvement in educational, medical, and extracurricular matters. The parents are to confer with each other on all major concerns affecting the children. It wasn't a total victory, but it wasn't a loss either. It was a middle ground. And in a case like this, where emotions ran hotter than logic, that middle ground felt like a rare and fragile thing. Kody's initial response was not a smile, it was an exhale. Long, slow, deliberate. A man attempting to take in not only the words, but the intent behind them. His gaze flashed up toward the ceiling for one brief moment, as if in silent thanks to someone or something outside of these courthouse walls. Across the aisle, the other side, stoic for much of the hearing, finally permitted a flash of relief to reveal itself. They had struggled fiercely to avoid full custody from being transferred, and they had won. But the increased parenting time was substantial. They were aware that it meant greater coordination, greater communication, and greater shared control over the children's lives. And the fans? This was reality television gold. Although cameras had not been present in the courtroom, they would witness every detail later in interviews, confessionals, and carefully crafted statements. The decision wasn't just about legal documents. It was about birthdays, school projects, and late-night phone calls. For the children, it meant more weekends at their dad's, more holiday mornings in a different home, and more chances to see their parents in the same room, hopefully without the tension that had become so common in recent years. The judge's decision wasn't simply pragmatic, it was a message, a reminder that custody wars aren't win or lose propositions for the parents. They're about keeping a child's right to love and be loved by both parties, free of having to decide. Stepping out of the courtroom, Kody's head was reeling. He hadn't gotten all he had hoped for, but he had fought back more time with his children. Time that in his own head had been slipping through his fingers. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was his second chance to be the father he had always hoped to be. He knew the public would weigh in. Some would view him as a man battling for his family, others as one attempting to manipulate a circumstance already broken. But not to him. This wasn't about perception. It was about showing up, about ensuring the next page didn't look like the last. At the conclusion of proceedings, the judge said something never uttered in custody decisions, something on a personal note. Mr. Brown, Miss Bice, I want both of you to recall that what we do here today is not about histories, but horizons. Your children will remember how you treat one another in this process more than the details of this decision. Be the example they need. It was the sort of thing that lingered, not only with the parents, but with all of the people in that room. Even the clerk of the court stood still for a brief moment before resuming the customary post-verdict protocol. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, microphones were thrust forward, cameras flashed, and questions rained like arrows. Kody, accompanied by his attorney, made a short statement. Today wasn't about winning or losing, it was about my kids. I'm thankful for the time I've been given, and I intend to make the most of it. It was brief, unadorned, calculated. He did not fuel the media firestorm with personal attacks or public displays of emotion. He left the door ajar for interpretation and let the court of public opinion do what it does best, talk. Before nightfall, the sister wives community had gone viral on the internet. Hashtags were trending, reaction videos went up on YouTube within hours of each other. Reddit forums analyzed every aspect of the decision, from the legalese to the tone of voice used by the judge. Some fans cheered Kody for battling on behalf of his children, others accused him of manipulating the custody battle to keep his exes in line. Others reminded them that regardless of the verdict, the children were the ones stuck in the middle. Back at home, Kody sat in a silent room, the court documents laid out on the table in front of him. He followed the lines of the schedule, envisioning the weekends, the holidays together, the calls about school activities. It was better than yesterday. And in that moment, he realized something. The fight was over, but the real work was just beginning. Court orders could set boundaries, but they couldn't force cooperation. That would be on him, on both of them. This day would be remembered as one of the most memorable in Sister Wives history, neither for a dramatic victory nor a devastating defeat, but because it demonstrated something unusual in this family's very long, complicated book. A compromise that could possibly work. The chapter was closed, but the book was far from done.